Part 110. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1091. Chapter 1091. You all think I'm a fool. In the past, the third princess would not have been able to understand it, but at this moment she understood it very clearly. The person she loved in front of her was not recovering quickly because of her, nor was he happy to welcome him because of her. Even going back a bit, maybe from the beginning, any of his joy and closeness were not because of her. This realization made her feel as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over her head, and her heart was chilled. Moreover, the ice shards were as sharp as razor blades, scratching her skin completely and dripping with blood. She turned around and left, not wanting to stay for a moment. Princess. Luzon had just adjusted his expression. When he saw this, he felt that something was wrong. When he wanted to stop her, the third princess had already picked up her skirt and started running. Kaiun also chased after him desperately. Soon, the master and the servant left the house and got into the carriage again. Let's go quickly, the third princess shouted in a tearful voice. The veteran driver didn't know what was going on, but the master lent the carriage to the third princess, so he had to obey the third princess's orders. So, the carriage quickly turned around and disappeared down the street. In the white clouds, business is booming as always. Due to the hot weather, the shop put out cold cakes some time ago. Glutinous rice is steamed and pounded, made into a wrapper, and stuffed with bean paste, osman thus honey and other fillings. Take a bite and it will be cool, sticky, glutinous, and sweet. It is really appetizing. Shopkeeper Peng is also a qualified businessman. He specially made a beautiful gift box with cold cakes with 8 kinds of fillings placed side by side on 2 levels. It is really pleasing to the eye. The price is not expensive, only 500 cents per box. Every customer who enters the store has such a small amount of money, and almost everyone walks out with 2 boxes. Whether it's a get-together with friends, make a snack plate. It is still very decent to visit relatives and friends and make souvenirs. Jiyan's status meant that she couldn't hang around in the front, so she went directly to the backyard. It happened that Chen 11 was thinking about a new product. He wanted to combine cake and ice cream, but unfortunately he could not always ensure the integrity of the ice cream. The cake always took shape and the ice cream turned into a puddle of water. If you put it in an ice cellar and freeze it, the cake outside will be as hard as crumbs and the taste will be very bad. Suddenly seeing his employer coming over, Chen 11 was overjoyed and hurriedly bent down to ask for advice. Jiyan thought of the glutinous rice noodles she had eaten in her previous life, and said, Master Chen, try using the outer shell of the cold cake to wrap the ice cream. It is not afraid of freezing. If it melts a little, the outer shell is still soft and waxy, and the ice cream inside is just right to eat. Chen 11 slapped his forehead with his hand, and he was so happy that he wanted to jump on the spot a few times. Oh, why didn't I think of it? This is a good way, this is a good way. After saying that, he ran off to find materials for experiments. Shopkeeper Peng took a few account books and was about to enter when he was almost knocked over by Chen 11, who was so angry that he laughed and cursed. This madman Chen must have become ill again. But after saying this, he went into the house and met with his employer, and he still had a few words to add to his old friend Chen 11. Master, Chen 11 has such an obsessive temper, don't be the same as him. Last time he was halfway through making snacks, and when I wanted to talk to him about something, he just scolded me and ran away. Jiyan will naturally not blame it. The reason why Bianjian is so prosperous today, and so many new products have been launched, is mostly due to Chen 11. Don't worry, Shopkeeper Peng, our shop just needs Master Chen to be so crazy. I don't know how many people outside are staring at our shop, waiting to launch new products frequently. Jian asked shopkeeper Peng to sit down and poured him a cup of sour plum soup with his own hands. This is also a new product in the shop. It is sweet and sour, and cool to relieve the heat. Shopkeeper Peng stood up and thanked him again, then sat down to talk. In fact, it's not a big deal. After all, the shop has been open for many years and has a mature business model. Soon, shopkeeper Peng went to work. Jian drank sour plum soup and looked through the account books. Shui Ling and Shui Yun couldn't sit still. One went to find some favorite snacks to eat, and the other went to help in the baking room. At this moment, chaos suddenly broke out in front. Everyone in the backyard poked their heads out of the house and saw the third princess running in with her skirt in hand, like an angry tiger, shouting loudly, "Li Jiyan, Li Jiyan! Come out!" Kaiyun and other maids followed behind. They wanted to stop the third princess but didn't dare. They stamped their feet anxiously. There were many guests in the front hall, thinking that there was a lot of fun to be seen, and they had blocked the small door leading to the backyard. Shopkeeper Peng made a quick decision and rushed forward to persuade the guests to go back to the front. There was a guest who didn't want to let go of the fun. Shopkeeper Peng turned cold and said, "This distinguished guest, are you sure you're not afraid of losing your head? That's a princess. What can you afford?" The guest immediately shrank his neck and walked away in despair. Shopkeeper Peng immediately closed the door, and then shouted to all the masters and waiters, "Stay in the house and don't move around casually." In a moment, the yard became quiet. At this moment, the third princess had already rushed into the side room. "Li Jiyan, tell me, does brother Lu like you? Tell me, make it clear." The third princess's face turned red and she pointed at Jiyan's nose. Her whole body seemed to explode at any moment. From birth, she has been a noble princess. Everyone is obedient and respectful, and everything she wants will be given to her. Now, the husband she fell in love with for the first time, the man she loved for the first time, is actually in love with her good sister. This is like a slap in the face, and it also shatters all the good things in the past. She can't accept it. Jiyan looked at the third princess blankly, feeling no fear or panic, but more relaxed. It's like a sharp sword hanging over your head, worrying about it day and night. Now that the sword has fallen, it doesn't matter whether you are injured or not, at least you don't have to worry anymore. Third princess, please sit down. We can talk about this matter slowly. Perhaps the good news was so calm, but it also stimulated the third princess, and she became even more furious. You must know that he likes you. Why don't you say that I am the only fool? You all think I am a fool and make me fool around, right? The phoenix hairpin on her head could not withstand the violent shaking and fell to the ground with a clatter. It's a pity that the owner who loved it in the past doesn't even look at it now. Jiyan didn't speak and looked at Feng Chai on the ground quietly until the third princess was exhausted and panting and could no longer lose her temper. Jiyan raised his hand and poured a cup of sour plum soup, pushed it to the opposite side, and then said, "Sit down and drink the sour plum soup first." After saying that, she squatted down and picked up the phoenix hairpin, and then waved her hands towards Shui Ling, Shui Yun, Cai Yun, and others at the door. Shui Ling and others hesitated, but finally retreated. Jiyan poured herself a cup of sour plum soup, took a sip, and spoke slowly. "I have been hesitating about how to tell you about this matter. After all, after telling you, our friendship will probably be ruined. Even if I am not wrong in this matter, you may also resent me, just like I did just now, fly into a rage. But now, even if we never see each other again and become enemies, I still want to make the matter clear. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1092. Chapter 1092, Sisters are like siblings, men are like clothes. She put down the cup and looked at the third princess. I grew up next to my brothers. I treat my brother's friends or the boys in my family as my elder brother. There are no exceptions, including Prince Lu and Mr. Jia. Especially Prince Lu, he is the same age as my eldest brother, more than 10 years older than me. I never thought that I would have any relationship with him beyond that of brother and sister. So, since I discovered Prince Lu's thoughts, I have never seen him again, and I didn't give him any room for misunderstanding. If you think about it carefully, you must also remember that even when Prince Lu arrived at Highland Palace, I always found excuses to hide. Even if it's like this today, it's really unavoidable, so I'll try to find a way for you to send someone to the Lu family to deliver the message. What am I doing for? I never want you to misunderstand me, and I don't want you to ruin our sisterhood because of a man. Jiyan sighed, thinking about this period of time. I really tried my best to find a consummation, but unfortunately it still ended like this. She also had red circles in her eyes, gritted her teeth, and continued. I really tried my best. I can't control what other people think, but I will never covet my sister's man, even if there is only one man in the world, I will never. We've been together for so long, you should know what my temper is like. I know you like Prince Lu, how could I get involved? The third princess lowered her head and said nothing, not sure whether she heard it or not. Jiyan was a little depressed. In her 2 lifetimes, this was the first time she had experienced such a bad thing. To put it bluntly, no matter how you explain it now, it's like mud thrown into your crotch, it's either or shit. She took a deep breath, suppressed the grievance in her heart, raised her hand to pick up the phoenix hairpin, and gently inserted it into the third princess's bun. I've finished what I said. If you still think I'm wrong and can't understand, then from now on we will. Before she could finish speaking, the third princess suddenly jumped up, hugged her tightly, and cried loudly. No, no, you can't say goodbye to me, Weavua, you are the only good sister I have, you can't abandon me. Brother Lu doesn't like me. If you leave again, I will be alone, you are all bad and you are all bullying me. The third princess was crying with tears and runny nose. She wished she could turn into a rope and tie up Jiyan, as if she was afraid that she would run away. Jiyan was choked so hard that he couldn't breathe, and he was so dazed that he didn't react for a long time. Aren't we going to break up the relationship? What kind of turning point is this? Fortunately, the third princess cried for a while and heard no sound, so she finally released the good news from her breast with her face reddened. Phew! Jiyan escaped death, took a few deep breaths, and cursed, you said you couldn't bear to leave me, but actually you wanted to kill me for revenge. You want to suffocate me. The third princess shrank her neck and sobbed softly, I'm just afraid that you will run away and that you won't be my sister anymore. Jiyan pulled a handful of messed up hair and couldn't help complaining, yes, you suffocated me to death, my family will kill you, and we will become a pair of female ghost sisters. The third princess couldn't help laughing as she thought about the 2 female ghosts holding hands and floating here and there. Jiyan rolled her eyes, took out a comb from the bag at her waist, pulled the third princess to sit down, and then helped her arrange her hair. Hurry, I'll comb your hair first, otherwise people will think you're looking for trouble, but you'll be beaten by me instead. The third princess felt guilty and aggrieved when she thought of her impulse just now. I also suddenly realized that, I am very angry. I know you are not, but you are just angry, angry brother Lu. No, Prince Lu does not like me. Even though I am so beautiful, I am still a princess. As he spoke, the third princess felt deeply wronged. The most important thing is that he doesn't like me, he can tell it, he obviously agreed to the marriage and is about to get married soon, but he secretly likes you. Also, you are so smart, you must have known what he was thinking, but you didn't tell me either. I thought you liked Prince Lu too, but I didn't dare to say it because of me. You two like each other, but I have become the bad guy who robs others of their marriage. Jiyan hit her on the head with a wooden comb and cursed, "You still blame me for not speaking out? Do I dare to speak out? You were like you just now, but fortunately you are in my shop. If you were in the palace, people would probably make trouble for the emperor and the prince, and even the whole story would be known. It hurts, it hurts." I said I was too angry. The third princess held her head and begged for mercy. Jiyan tidied her bun quickly and put the comb into the third princess's hand. "You can comb it for me too." The third princess took the comb and began to clumsily try to be a dressing girl. Jiyan's hair was pulled by her from time to time, and she gasped in pain, but she didn't forget to continue talking. "Uncle Huang loves you very much and gave you a marriage to Prince Lu. He must have wanted you to have a good destiny in the rest of your life, but he also had other considerations. After all, the Lu family guards the southwest. Now that you know what Prince Lu is thinking, you should think carefully about what to do in the future. You should just pretend that what happened today has not happened, continue to get along with him, and get married later. It's better to ask the emperor's uncle to take back the marriage and choose a new consort. This matter is of great concern. Don't be anxious. Think about it slowly. You will have to be careful in the next few days. Of course, no matter what you decide, I will support you." The third princess nodded slightly, with a little confusion in her eyes. She played with Jiyan's hair in her hands and sighed softly, "I understand." Finally, she asked again, "What about you?" Jiyan didn't know what she was asking about, so she replied thoughtfully, "I don't like intrigues, and a big family is not suitable for me. I want to find someone who has no father or mother, and marry someone I know my heart and soul. Of course, it will take a long time, so there is no rush. As for Prince Lu, I will definitely not see him again or have anything to do with him. Our family is maintaining superficial harmony with him and we just don't want to break up with him for the time being." The third princess put down her comb and looked much more relaxed. "I understand. I want to think about this matter. I will go back to the palace first, and I will ask someone to send you a message later if I have something to do." Jiyan nodded, "Okay, you'd better take my carriage. I won't worry if I don't send you back safely." The two of them had solved the knot in their minds. Although the problem had not yet been resolved, they both felt much relieved. Jiyan opened the door and the third princess walked out. Kaiun and others immediately stepped forward to wait for their master to leave. Jiyan stood in front of the door and didn't speak for a long time. Until Shui Ling walked forward slowly and asked in a low voice, "Princess, the third princess is not angry anymore." "Don't be angry anymore. She has an upright temper. Just talk about it." Jiyan shook her head, relaxed her shoulders and neck, and said with a smile, "When the carriage comes back, let's go home." "No. No, the princess is not ready yet." Shui Ling looked very strange, as if he was trying his best to endure something, and his face was strangely red. Jiyan looked confused and asked, "Are there any other things to deal with?" Shui Ling pointed to her head and whispered, "Princess, your head." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1093. Chapter 1093. Everyone has two faces. Jiyan subconsciously touched her hair, then turned around and jumped back into the house, closing the door with a bang. Shui Ling couldn't bear it any longer. She covered her mouth and laughed silently, making her stomach hurt from laughing. Shui Yun came from behind and slapped her twice with his hand in anger, but he couldn't hold it down. In the room, Jiyan moved a mirror out of the room, waited until she could see her own appearance clearly, and cursed angrily, "Zhao Songbei, you girl, just wait." She knew that the third princess didn't know how to comb her hair, but she thought it wouldn't be difficult to just straighten the messy bun and put the jewelry back in place. Who would have thought that this evil-minded guy would actually do something evil? What to do with your hair? She actually had 3 braids pointing upward, like rice stalks, stuck on her head here and there, like a crazy woman. She just didn't know that she was still standing in front of the door talking just now, and the maids and waiters in the courtyard could see clearly. Reappreciate the method of seeking thousands of ways. How can we erase all the talents of the talents? As they were walking in the carriage on the road, the third princess sneezed twice, then fell down on the cushions with laughter, feeling extremely proud. Kayun's face turned red while suppressing laughter, and she whispered, "Princess, you are not afraid that the princess will come to settle accounts with you in the future? Just now was so embarrassing." The third princess rubbed her sore face and replied in a coquettish tone, "Who asked her to make me sad? Although it's not her fault, I can't be jealous anymore. Humph, so many people like her, look at me again." At this point, she sighed again and the smile on her face disappeared. After all, how can you not feel sad and regretful when someone you have liked for so long is in such trouble? If it is true as Good News said, Prince Lu may really have another face, not as beautiful as the one she saw or liked. But if you think about it carefully, it's not surprising. There is no one with 2 faces, both inside and outside the palace. It is a businessman who runs a shop. He is friendly and enthusiastic to the outside world, but he may treat his workers harshly and squeeze out wages internally. What's more, he was the only legitimate son of the Lu family who guarded the southwest. He had been alone in Zindu for many years and was responsible for maintaining all the connections of the Lu family. He even had to convey the court's trends to the southwest. How could a gentle and harmless scholar be qualified? The third princess sighed softly and said no more. Kayun followed her master all the way from Lu's house to Bianjian. She also vaguely heard a few words in the yard, so she naturally guessed most of them. She didn't dare to persuade her at the moment, and she didn't know how to persuade her. In the end, she could only follow her master in silence. Soon, the carriage arrived in front of the palace. The master and the servants got out of the car and went straight through the door. Inside and outside the palace, the place with the most eyes and ears is the entrance to the palace. The third princess rearranged her hair and adjusted her clothes, but her eyes were still red and swollen after crying. As expected, in less than half an hour, the third princess came back crying outside the palace, and everyone knew about it. In the imperial study room, the emperor put down the memorial, rubbed his temples, and asked, "What's going on? Is the third princess wronged outside?" Manager Yi was a little embarrassed because he didn't know. After all, the maids following the princess were all from Highland Palace, so he couldn't go out of his way to inquire. So, he told the truth, "Your Majesty, I don't know the details." But the third princess came out of the palace together with the princess. She first went to the Lu family to visit Prince Lu, and came out soon, and then went to Bianjian looking for the princess. It stands to reason that the princess is smart and sensible and would not bully the princess. Maybe there is a misunderstanding, or maybe an outsider has made the princess angry. The emperor nodded. "Jiyan, that girl is younger than the third princess, but very sensible. I feel relieved that the third princess is with her." So, Luzon made the third princess angry? Humph. The emperor snorted coldly and was very dissatisfied. The third princess gave him a hand in marriage and wronged him, didn't she? Last time he suddenly fell ill, and I didn't have time to investigate and find out, but he was bold and bullied my princess again. Manager Yi couldn't say anything else, so he said, "Your Majesty, don't worry too much. Children are always thoughtful, and they have to worry about every little thing. They will be sad for a long time. Maybe in a few days, there will be no need to persuade, and things will be fine." This makes sense. The emperor thought about it and put his hand away. There are really too many things that need to be busy. Being able to give your daughter such a little free time and care is a rare tenderness for a dying emperor. In Zilong Pavilion, the prince was also busy reading the memorial. Not only need to look at the current ones, but also look at the ones from many years ago, even some old files, and go through them to make sure they are well aware of them. Although he was raised among the people before and was able to grow up safely and healthily, he also studied and learned skills, but after all, he was no longer in the palace and lost a lot of accumulation. Now we can only work hard to make up for it. There is no other way but to work harder. On the table, a small snow-white fox lay on a large pile of files and memorials. Maybe it's boring, the little fox's three big tails are sweeping back and forth from time to time. The prince occasionally looked up and saw it, and couldn't help but smile. His increasingly majestic and noble face, because of this smile, has a hint of its original simplicity and peace. Sanjo, thank you for accompanying me to read the book. Just hold on, I'll finish the work in a while and let Zhao Jian prepare your favorite fried fish, okay? Santiago rushed into the prince's arms, chirping happily. The prince was tickled when his big tail brushed his neck, and he laughed even more happily. Does your master know that you are so greedy? He bought you off with just one plate of fried fish, and he didn't even come back to his Highland palace. Sanjiao shrank his neck and covered himself with his big tail like a quilt, continuing to pretend to be stupid to the end. The prince laughed loudly, but his hands became softer and gentler, following the white fur of the little fox. Eunuch Feng walked to the door with the young eunuch. Hearing the movement inside, he whispered, "Your Highness, the old slave has brought the tonic soup." "Come in, His Royal Highness," the prince responded inside. Eunuch Feng quickly dismissed the young eunuch, brought the tonic soup himself, and walked in. Having been serving the prince for some time, he has already figured out some of the prince's habits. The prince likes peace and dislikes the crowds and noise. As long as you serve him attentively and don't talk too much, he won't blame you even if you make a small mistake. Overall, he is an easy-to-serve master. Eunuch Feng hunched over, carefully placed the tonic soup on the table, and said with a smile, "Your Highness, the Emperor was worried that you were too tired and injured your body, so he specially ordered the kitchen to stew the tonic soup for you." The prince nodded and said, "Okay, let it go." When the little fox heard the noise, he got out of the prince's arms, put his head next to the soup cup, twitched his nose twice, and then quickly retreated. Whose face was full of disgust. Eunuch Feng saw that the prince looked very good and liked the little fox very much, so he joked and said, "Santiago is really smart. It's no wonder that the princess loves him so much. I heard that the dried fish he eats are specially transported from Quanzhou. Woolen cloth." Really, the prince opened the cup, drank the tonic soup in one gulp, and ordered, "It's a pity that Santiago is in Zilong Pavilion, so there is no dried fish to eat. However, let the stove fry a plate of crispy fish, it likes it too." "Okay, don't worry, Your Highness, I will go and watch the cook fry the fish in person." Eunuch Feng responded and was about to retreat. Sanjo didn't know whether it was because he was quick to talk or because he was tired of lying down, so he jumped off the table and followed him to the kitchen. At this time, the young beside Mr. Yi came to report urgently, "Your Highness, the Emperor has summoned you. Please come over with me as soon as possible." 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1094. Chapter 1094. It's not the right time to die. The prince stood up, frowned and asked, "What happened?" The little also wanted to show his face in front of the prince, so he whispered, "The Emperor is in Cunning Palace." Cunning Palace? The prince hesitated for a moment before finally remembering. Cunning Palace is the residence of the queen, but because the queen has been ill for a long time, the palace has been closed, but it has been gradually forgotten by people. The emperor and the queen are at odds with each other, which is well known in the palace. At such a time, the emperor suddenly rushed over. Could it be? The prince quickly walked out of the door, and eunuch Feng and the young quickly followed him. Unexpectedly, the little fox might not be happy to be left behind, and actually jumped up and chased after him. In Cunning Palace, it was so quiet right now that you could hear a pin drop. The eunuchs and maids who were in charge of serving in the palace were all kneeling in the corner with their heads hunched, not daring to breathe. If you look closely, you can see that they are all trembling, obviously extremely frightened. The emperor stood at the door of his bedroom, his expression a bit complicated, and he couldn't tell whether it was regret, nostalgia, or relief. General Manager Yi stood aside and whispered, "Your Majesty, my condolences." The emperor sighed and said nothing. They are a married couple after all. Although there were too many conflicts and irritations before, the two also had a sweet past and gave birth to a child together. Now, this man left as soon as he said he would leave, which made him unable to believe it for a moment. The most important thing is, this timing is terrible. At this moment, the prince arrived. "Father, my mother's condition has worsened." The prince did not look anxious or sad. After all, he only came to pay homage to the queen on the day of his appearance in the court, so he was not really close and familiar with her. But after the initial consonant of his voice, he also shouted it very naturally, doing what a junior should do. As expected, the emperor was very satisfied and softened his expression, then turned sideways and motioned for the prince to take a look inside the room. The colorful curtains and furnishings have been removed from the room, making it look a bit empty. On a rosewood bed carved with peonies and phoenixes, there lay a skinny queen, wearing a phoenix robe and a gorgeous phoenix crown, with her hands folded on her lower abdomen, as if she was sleeping peacefully. The prince's expression changed and he asked in a low voice, "Father, mother, this is..." The emperor nodded and responded, "Yes, the queen has passed away. Your crown prince ceremony will be in 3 days. It is really a bad time for her to leave at this time." The prince also felt that the timing was not good. After all, it would take at least half a month to mourn. In this way, the crown prince ceremony has to be postponed, the selection of concubines has to be postponed, he starts to take over the government, etc., all have to be postponed. But some words cannot come out of his mouth. Hence, he remained silent, with a look of embarrassment and confusion. As expected, the emperor was reluctant to let his son worry and immediately said, "Things have their own priorities, and now everything must make way for your crown prince ceremony. Just do what you want, here, I'll keep it a secret for now, and wait until the concubine is chosen before announcing the funeral." The prince seemed a little surprised and asked, "Father, the weather is so hot, and you are buried in peace, how can you wrong your mother for my sake?" The emperor waved his hand and said, "Don't worry too much. The situation is like this and we can only arrange it this way. If you feel guilty, take more care of the third princess in the future. The third princess is the queen's only bloodline. I think the queen must have a soul in heaven, so she can feel more at ease." The prince quickly lowered his head and saluted, "Father, don't worry, the third princess is my sister. Even if nothing happens today, I will take more care of her. Before, I was alone outside, and I was very lonely. What I envied most was the closeness and harmony between the brothers and sisters of the Li family. Now that I have a younger sister, I naturally have to pamper her." The emperor was very pleased to hear this and said nothing more. Manager Yi and eunuch Feng were both capable. After receiving the order, they arranged everything in Cunning Palace in less than an hour. Although it cannot be told to the world, the queen is the mother of a country, and death is a serious matter, so it is not easy to be wronged. So, the palace of Cunning was hung with white flowers, and the queen was also placed in the longevity chamber. A large number of ice cubes filled most of the space, leaving only a place for the queen to lie down. Even so, there were still a lot of ice buried in most of the coffin boards. This is to keep the body at a low temperature and prevent it from decaying. All the eunuchs and maids originally thought that they would be buried with death, but they were unexpectedly pardoned because the emperor was considering choosing a crown prince and a concubine. It was not easy to kill. This is simply a huge surprise from death to life. Everyone wishes they could grow more heads and 6 arms, and desperately look for work, for fear that they will be useless and eventually be sent to be buried with them. In this Highland palace, the third princess had no appetite. She lay wilted in front of the window and looked at the flowers and plants in the yard in a daze. She was born a princess, so naturally she was extremely proud. She is not willing to let her spend the rest of her life with a man who does not love her. But after all, she had been moved, and if she told her father the truth, she would be a little reluctant to see the person she once loved being punished. This is really a dilemma. At this time, Kayun hurriedly walked in from outside and was about to speak. The third princess waved her hands impatiently and said angrily, "I already told you, I have no appetite and don't want to eat. Stop trying to persuade me, don't you bother me." Kayun quickly knelt down and said anxiously, "Princess, it's not this, something is wrong over there in Cunning Palace." The slave went to deliver peaches to the queen, but the guarding the door did not allow the slave to enter. Moreover, the emperor and the prince seemed to have exist. "What?" The third princess suddenly sat up and asked in horror, "You mean, you didn't see the queen mother? And the father and the prince and brother are both here?" "Yes," Princess Kayun said bravely, "I guess something happened, but I don't know what it is." The third princess turned pale, stood up and ran out stumblingly. The queen mother has been bedridden all year round, and her father never wanted to see her. Now that the father has not only passed away, but the prince is also here, what else can happen? I'm afraid my mother is not well. The guarding the gate of Cunning Palace dared to stop Kayun, but he did not dare to stop the third princess. Even as he was about to step forward to salute and speak, he was pushed aside by the third princess. "Get out of here." In the gate, the eyes were filled with white and the ears were filled with silence, which made the third princess burst into tears at that time. She ran and fell, her bun was messed up, and her dress was messed up. She finally crawled to the coffin and saw her mother lying on the ice. She could no longer hold on and fainted. The emperor was explaining some trivial matters to the of Cunning Palace under the eaves of the corridor. He heard the commotion and happened to see his daughter fainting. Fortunately, the prince was not far away and hugged his sister. The emperor was anxious and stepped forward to scold, "Why is the third princess here?" The prince sighed and replied, "Father, the queen is the biological mother of the princess sister after all. Maybe she found out because of a tacit understanding." The emperor was helpless and signaled Manager Yi and others to come forward to serve him. Mr. Yi quickly gave the third princess an awakening pill and pinched her. Soon, the third princess woke up. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1095. Chapter 1095, The Dead Make Way for the Living. She looked at everyone blankly before remembering what had just happened, so she lay on the coffin and cried loudly. "Mother, mother, woo-woo." At this time, twilight has enveloped the earth, and everything is dark. The girl who lost her mother cried so hard that it made people feel sour in their hearts. The emperor sighed, stepped forward and patted his daughter on the back, comforting her. "Okay, don't cry. Your mother has been ill for so long and the oil lamp has dried up. Now she is relieved. I will give her a decent funeral, and she will not lack the honor of the queen. It's just." "Just what?" The third princess raised her head and looked at her father with red eyes. Suddenly, there was a suspicion in her heart that made her shudder. The emperor was a little afraid to face his daughter's gaze. He turned his head and coughed twice, and said, "The ceremony for the crown prince's conferment is coming soon, and the selection of the prince's concubine is also related to the stability and inheritance of the entire Tianwu. At this time, if there is a funeral, just fight, there are too many arrangements. So, I have to ask your mother to stay here for a few more days and keep it secret from the outside world. After the crown prince ceremony and the selection of the crown princess, I will give your mother a good funeral. Your mother is a queen and the mother of a country. She will definitely understand what I am doing. After all, the most important thing is. The third princess did not speak. 2 lines of tears, faintly bloodshot, slipped quietly from her eyes. Father, my mother has been married to you for 20 years and has given birth to children for you. Even if she makes mistakes, she will always be your first wife. Even if you don't like her and blame her, she is already dead. Isn't it worthy of letting her rest in her grave? Must she be left here to rot and stink? Must she wait until the right day to die? The third princess didn't cry hysterically, she was just like a child who didn't understand anything. She asked every word, which completely hurt the emperor's heart and exposed his face. He didn't know how to answer, or couldn't answer at all. In the end, he could only choose to escape. I know that you are too sad and have no rules. I will not argue with you, but don't say this. In addition to being your mother's daughter, you are also the princess of Tianwu. For Tianwu, you and your mother are destined to achieve something. Sacrifice. I'm going back first. If you are willing, you can stay here and guard. With that said, he flicked his sleeves and went back to the imperial study. The third princess did not salute or ask any questions. She slowly turned around and continued to cry while holding the coffin. The prince was silent for a long time, then knelt down and said, "Don't be too sad. Your mother has a spirit in heaven, and she always hopes that you will take good care of yourself." The third princess wiped away her tears fiercely and retorted angrily, "Your mother is dead, won't you be sad?" The prince lowered his eyes and responded softly, "My biological mother passed away so early that I don't even have the slightest memory of her. And even if I want to worship her now, I don't know where her bones are." The third princess choked, but the kindness in her heart did not allow her to say anything else. The prince didn't care about her. He patted her shoulder and said, "I will send someone to pick up the princess and bring her into the palace to accompany you. You, have my condolences." After saying that, he got up and left the palace gate. As soon as he turned the corner, the little fox jumped down from the side courtyard wall and fell into his arms. The prince smiled helplessly and said while tracing his smooth neck hair, "Your master will enter the palace soon. Then you must not forget the little fried fish in Zilong Pavilion. Remember to come and see me from time to time." The little fox immediately raised his neck and looked around, looking guilty as if he had been caught slacking off. The prince smiled so hard that he kept walking back with the little fox in his arms. Eunuch Feng followed a few steps away with the young eunuch, not daring to speak or listen. "We are about to arrive at Zilong Pavilion," and the prince finally spoke. "Eunuch Feng, go to Sujintan to invite the princess to the palace to accompany the princess. Remember to explain the matter clearly and don't let the princess be frightened. The princess is smart and knows the importance, so there is no need to worry about her leaking the secret." "Yes, Your Highness, don't worry, I will take care of it now." Eunuch Feng didn't dare to delay, so he quickly prepared his carriage and horses and left the palace quickly. "Good news is very relaxing because a major issue on my mind has been solved." Even though he was tricked into a clown by the third princess, he was still in a good mood. On the carriage back to Broken Gold Beach, he was humming almost the whole way. Shui Ling and Shui Yun were happy to see their master rarely. Shui Yun smiled and said, "Princess, it's much cooler after the sun sets. I'll cook some good dishes. Would you like a glass of wine?" Ji Yun nodded and agreed happily. "Okay, I happened to make a lot of wine last year, so I'll open a jar and taste it. Remember to prepare ice cubes and let the wine sober up for a while." Shui Ling joined in the fun and begged greedily, "Miss, can you give us a drink too?" Ji-yin hit her and said jokingly, "Okay, as long as you don't get drunk and act like a drunkard." Shui Ling blushed and twisted around in protest. Last year during the Mid-Autumn Festival, she was greedy and had a few more drinks. As a result, she went too far and went to the house, climbed a tree, and struggled so hard that she was knocked unconscious and thrown back to the room before the family could calm down. As he was talking, the carriage arrived at the village, and from a distance, the village was very lively. At the entrance of the village, Ji-yin jumped out of the carriage and asked a few questions. It turned out that there was an old man in the village celebrating his birthday. The old man didn't make any special arrangements at home. He just cooked some good food and invited the village chief and Uncle Zhao and others to have a drink, just as the old brothers got together. Over the years, life has been better in the village. The elderly are well fed, clothed, and warm, and enjoy many blessings. But no one can escape birth, old age, illness, and death. One after another, 4 or 5 old people who had fled over the mountains and ridges together left. So, the rest of us cherish the time we spend together more and more. They all look forward to seeing more of their children and grandchildren's future and the good days of Broken Gold Beach. Ji-yin doesn't want to join in the fun with the old men. After all, her identity is here, and in the past, it would only make everyone feel restricted and uncomfortable. So, she opened the warehouse directly, took out 2 jars of good wine, 2 pieces of material suitable for making clothes for the elderly, added 2 boxes of snacks, and 2 baskets of fruits, and quickly asked Shui Ling to lead people to deliver them. It's not that she is reluctant to give wine, it's because old men like spicy wine and dislike wine that is sour and not strong enough. Needless to say, receiving a birthday gift from the host's family made the gathering of the old men even more lively. The old man who passed his birthday also asked his son to come to his old house to express his gratitude and sent back a plate of longevity cakes. Ji-yin ate a piece and packed it up, planning to have someone deliver it to Yuan tomorrow. This kind of longevity cake is actually an ordinary shortbread with sugar and sesame fillings. But because it is used by the elderly to live their lives, it has the implication that children who eat it will live a long life. Such a good thing, so good news, cannot forget my nephew. After nightfall, the evening breeze cooled down completely. On the small stone table in the backyard, there were delicious dishes carefully prepared by Shui Yun. Shui Ling smiled and took out the white jade wine jug from the broken ice basin. As a result, just after pouring 3 glasses of purple-red wine, the front courtyard door was knocked. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1096. Chapter 1096. Ghost. There is a ghost. The night is getting darker and darker, and the world is silent. The noisy night insects in the past seem to have disappeared in Cunning Palace. The third princess knelt in front of her mother's coffin, numbly adding paper money into the copper basin. She didn't know whether the paper money was really useful to the Queen Mother, or whether there really was Nahi Bridge and the Palace of Hell. She only knew that from now on, she would have no mother. In fact, she had vaguely known since she was a child that her mother valued her father more than her daughter. Which concubine the father spent the night with, the second prince was hugged by the father, or which maid he accepted to serve in the study would make the Queen Mother furious. Even if she occasionally gets sick and has a fever, her mother is more happy than sad. Because of this, the father will come to visit her and then stay in Cunning Palace. But when she was young, she did not know how to express her grievances of being ignored, so she would lose her temper and beat and scold the maids and eunuchs. Only when she makes a mistake or gets into trouble, will the mother pay attention to her. It wasn't until she grew up and understood things that she realized how ignorant her mother was. She also deliberately alienated her mother. But now, the queen mother has passed away and lies alone in the coffin. All the complaints and dissatisfaction suddenly disappeared, leaving only regret and confusion. Jian changed into a moon-white dress and hurried to Cunning Palace. As soon as she entered the door and saw the lonely third princess, she couldn't help but shed tears. The girl who smiles brightly at all times is like an abandoned little beast at this moment, lonely and pitiful. "Princess, I'm coming." Jian stepped forward and hugged her tightly. The third princess's eyes were still a little dazed. She turned around and saw the good news with tears streaming down her face. It took her a while to wake up and smiled softly. "Jian, you shouldn't have come. This palace is hell, and Cunning Palace is even more like a prison cell. Whoever gets involved will be in bad luck." "No, I'm wrong. I am the of plague. My mother is dead, my father is heartless, and my fiancé doesn't like me. I am a failure in life and have no use at all." "Don't say that." Jian's heart ached like a knife. "No one can escape or stop birth, old age, illness, and death. Bad things just happen together and have nothing to do with you. You are the third princess of Tianwu. You are beautiful, fierce, and noble. Everyone is envious of you. How could you be the god of plague? Everything will pass, soon, it will get better soon. Will you?" The third princess did not move, just leaning in Jian's arms, her youthful and bright face turned gray. Jian had no choice but to take out a handkerchief from her purse and gently wipe the face of the third princess. The third princess still wanted to speak, but her eyelids felt heavier and heavier, and she quickly fell into a deep sleep. Kaiyun's eyes were red and swollen from crying. Seeing his master like this, he quickly stepped forward on his knees. Jian signaled her to speak softly, and then whispered, "Is there a suitable room? Let it be tidied up so that the third princess can have a good sleep. Otherwise, she will be too sad and may become depressed and sick easily." Kaiyun glanced around and asked, "Are you going to place it here?" "Well," Jian nodded, "I'm afraid the princess doesn't want to leave Cunning Palace at this time. Of course, even if she wants to leave, it may not be easy." This sentence, the good news, remained in my heart and I did not say it. The emperor clearly wants to keep the funeral a secret and let the dead make way for the living. This matter must be kept strictly confidential. Cunning Palace can only be entered but not exited. Kaiyun immediately took the maids to clean the side hall. Fortunately, this was the place where the third princess lived when she was young. Although it has been a long time since we moved away, the basic bed, table, chairs, and other items are still there. We can go to the in-charge and ask for bedding and other soft materials, so that we can live there. Shui Ling was very strong, so he carried the third princess on his back and put her on the bed. Kaiyun took off her shoes, wiped her hands and face, and fed her master warm water, then she felt relieved. Jian sat outside, briefly asked about the past, and comforted Kaiyun and the maids. "Don't worry, the third princess is too tired and too sad. It's a good thing to have a good sleep at this time. You should keep watch when you need to, and rest when you need to. Get up tomorrow morning and listen to the princess arrangements." Kaiyun and others quickly agreed. Although their expressions were still a bit frightened, they were much better than before. You must know that the third princess is impatient with general affairs. When Jian lived in Highland Palace, she was the one who arranged almost everything, big and small, and the third princess didn't care at all. Compared to the serious master of the third princess, the maids and eunuchs are more accustomed to listening to good news. At this time, she came urgently and naturally became the backbone of everyone. Jian was about to turn around and look at the third princess, but a white shadow flashed across the yard, causing the timid to scream. "Ah, there is a ghost." Everyone was so frightened by this voice that they went crazy and ran around like headless flies. After all, there was a coffin with a corpse lying in the main hall. Everyone thought it was a fake corpse. Jian frowned, and just as she was about to scold him, the little fox Sanjo jumped into her arms. Ji-Yun breathed a long sigh of relief and couldn't help but slap the troublemaker on the head. "Don't be so elusive next time, and if you dare to scare people again, I'll make you into a fox fur scarf." The little fox felt the anger of his master and shrank his neck, not daring to say a word. Ji-Yun couldn't help it, so he turned to everyone in the courtyard and scolded, "Who was shouting just now? Slap him 20 times, go back to the house and reflect. If you dare to talk nonsense again and disturb the peace of the deceased, you will be severely punished." The timid was immediately pulled out, slapped 20 times in the face without even asking for mercy, and then pulled off again crying. Everyone else is much more cautious and works hard, and no one dares to speak easily. Ji-Yun hugged the little fox and sat in front of the door so that everyone could see her at any time and report anything. When everyone saw this, they were naturally very relieved. Therefore, paper money was kept burning in the copper basin in front of the queen's coffin, and incense candles and white lanterns were kept lit everywhere. The ice cubes needed to cool down the coffin were replaced every hour without any neglect. Ji-Yun's hand was stroking the little fox, and she felt mixed in her heart. She got along well with the third princess, but the queen really didn't have any friendship at all. It could even be said that there was a deep grudge. Unexpectedly, the queen died like this, and her dignity after death was still required to be protected. I have to say that things are impermanent. In the Zilong pavilion, the prince was still sorting out the memorial. Eunuch Feng stood at the door with a bow, secretly pulled his sleeves to cover his face, and yawned. He thought for a moment, then diligently stepped forward and added another candlestick to his master, and carefully advised, "Your Highness, it's already midnight, it's time to rest." The prince raised his head, glanced at the door, and asked, "Is there no news yet?" Eunuch Feng was startled, his mind was spinning wildly, and he finally figured it out, so he quickly responded, "Your Highness, wait a moment, I will go take a look right now." After saying that, he quickly retreated and rushed towards Cunning Palace like crazy after leaving the door. It's really a secret. He had just brought the princess here, thinking that the third princess would be with the princess. Who would have thought that His Highness the Crown Prince was still thinking about the follow-up? Mistake, mistake. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1097. Chapter 1097. Pain is the best catalyst for growth. Why didn't he leave a young to listen to the news from Cunning Palace and come back to report it? Fortunately, Zilong Pavilion is not too far from Cunning Palace. 2/4 of an hour is enough for a round trip. So, when the prince had 7 or 8 more memorials in hand, Eunuch Feng came back sweating profusely. "Your Highness, the third princess is tired from crying and has already gone to bed. The princess is personally sitting in charge and arranging people from Cunning Palace to watch the queen's funeral and burn paper. I heard that there was a young who didn't understand the rules. He shouted a few times and was slapped by the princess. Now everyone obeys orders and the funeral is handled in an orderly manner." The prince raised his hand to pick up the tea bowl, took a sip, covered the raised corners of his mouth, and finally responded, "I understand, rest." Eunuch Feng breathed a sigh of relief and quickly called the eunuchs to come forward to help his master wash and change clothes. After finishing his work and leaving the young to keep watch, Eunuch Feng left the house. The night wind blew, and the soaked clothes on his back made him shiver. Accompanying you is like accompanying a tiger. We always look at Mr. Yi's reputation, but now we know how dangerous it is behind the reputation. Is it too late for him to regret it now? He still wants to be a deputy general manager, who can get benefits without having to stand in front and lose his head at any time. The night became thicker and thinner little by little, and finally was completely driven away by the white fish belly in the eastern sky, restoring life to the world. The third princess woke up from her deep sleep and looked at the unfamiliar bed tent for a long time before she came back to her senses. She slowly turned her head and saw the sleeping figure lying on the table, tears streaming down her face. The person she loved with all her heart deceived her and treated her badly, but secretly he loved her wholeheartedly. How could she not be sad or angry about this matter? Naturally, it would not be possible to completely resolve the knot in just a few words. But she couldn't let go of her only friend. So, she chose to forgive. At this moment, she was extremely lucky to have made the right choice. When she was at her most desperate and sad, there was someone who rushed to her in the dark night to come for her. Tears flowed silently, blurring the shadows in front of my eyes. The third princess cried for a long time, and her heart became clearer and clearer. She stood up slowly, wiped away her tears, and walked barefoot to the door. In the courtyard, the eunuchs and maids who had been guarding the whole night leaned on the pillars and slept swaying here and there. In the main hall, the ice outside the coffin melted, and water droplets fell little by little, forming a small bubble, which slowly overflowed, crossed the threshold, and slid down the steps, like a long trail of tears. In the copper basin in front of the coffin, the flame has been extinguished, leaving only half a basin of paper ashes floating in the morning wind, feeling cold and lonely. When the queen of a country dies, there is no mourning, no order for the ladies to cry, no officials to pay homage, and no sutras to be chanted for salvation. She is the only one who is useless, a daughter who can only cry, a daughter who relies on others to survive, a daughter who has no power. If she had power, her father would not care at all about her words, her mother would not wait to rot in such a miserable way, and the person she likes would not cheat her casually. Ji-yin took a nap for a while, and when she woke up rubbing her sore neck, she was startled by the figure in front of the door. She hurriedly dragged her numb legs over and asked, "Princess, when did you wake up? Are you hungry? I'll let Shui-yun give it to you." Without wanting to, the third princess turned to smile at her, and then gently held her hand. "Good news, don't worry, I'm fine. You can even say, I'm fine, very fine." Ji-yin was so excited by her smile that she hugged her subconsciously. "What's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" No, the third princess hugged her back and put her head on her shoulder. Her voice was very soft and soft. "Good news, if I say that I want to marry Luzon, what do you think?" Ji-yin was stunned for a moment. Although she didn't understand what the third princess was thinking, she still responded, "If we only consider his family background, he is indeed a good candidate for marriage. The Lu family are not in Kyoto, so no one will disturb your wedding days. Moreover, Prince Lu is the only legitimate son, and the children you give birth to will also be legitimate descendants of the Lu family." But, needless to say, this is enough. The third princess let go of the good news and stood side by side with her at the door, smiling hollowly. "That's enough, it's all I want. I know what you want to say, but that's not important. There are several couples in this world who got married because they liked each other. They were just taking advantage of each other. If others can do it, why can't I?" She felt panicked after hearing the good news. She knew clearly that the third princess seemed to have grown and changed a lot overnight, but this growth and change did not seem to make people happy. At this moment, Shui-yun brought a tray over. On the tray are freshly cooked millet porridge, a plate of dumplings with vegetarian fillings, and 2 plates of appetizers. Looking at her master's unhappy expression, she said, "Princess, please accompany the princess to have breakfast." The good news was about to speak, but the third princess got there first. "Put the things in the house, but if your master doesn't want to eat them, I will take you back." Ji-yin immediately objected, "No, I have nothing to do at home, so I will stay with you for a few more days." "No need," the third princess shook her head, "you are so smart, you can't guess my father's plan, right? My mother's funeral will probably not start until more than 10 days. Maybe my father has other arrangements and has to postpone it longer. As a daughter, I can just keep going and you don't have to suffer the same fate. What's more, my mother was not good to you when she was alive. You ignored the past and kept her peaceful for me for one night. I am already very grateful. As for the future, let me go on my own. Ji-yin held her hand tightly, feeling increasingly uneasy. When the sun finally broke through the clouds and jumped out of the horizon, everyone in Cunning Palace woke up completely. The guarding the door didn't wait to rub the goo from his eyes, but saw the third princess personally escorting Princess Kangol to the door. He was about to step forward to stop her in fear. Princess, the Emperor has an order, you are only allowed to come in but not go out. The third princess stared with a very cold look on her face and scolded, how presumptuous. When did it become your slave's turn to interfere in my princess's affairs? I don't dare, the quickly knelt down and kowtowed. The third princess motioned to Kayun and others to open the door, and then gave Ji-yin a hard push, signaling her to leave quickly. Unable to hear the good news, he took Shui Ling and Shui Yun and walked out. The door was closed immediately. Ji-yin subconsciously took a step forward, instinctively wanting to pull the third princess out. Cunning Palace is no longer Cunning Palace, it was the third princess who buried herself in hell. The third princess stood in the door, smiling and shaking her head with her, until the door crack closed, completely blocking her pale cheek. Shui Yun and Shui Ling didn't know why the third princess kicked their master out of the palace, but the third princess would not harm her master, and being stuck in there, guarding a dead man, was really not a good thing, so of course she had to stay away if she could. The two of them dragged their master almost all the way and rushed to the palace gate. While the court hall was busy discussing the title of prince, they left the palace directly. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1098. Chapter 1098. Thousands of clues. In the Earl's mansion, the Li family was gathering in a room. Li Lauer stayed with Mr. Wen in a small courtyard in the south of the city last night. As a result, Mr. Wen went to court, and he received news from his family that his niece had been rushed into the palace last night. He immediately rushed back to the Earl's palace and asked his daughter-in-law for details. It happened that Jie Huan also went back to the Earl's mansion to pick up things. Hearing about this matter, he was also worried about it. Seeing that her father-in-law and brother-in-law both looked bad, Weiner persuaded her. Dad, Brother Huan, my sister is smart, and she must also know that the family is worried about her. Maybe someone will send a message back soon. Besides, the third princess treats her as her own sister, and she can take care of her if anything happens. Let's not get into trouble for the time being and wait and see what happens. Li Lauer and Jie Huan naturally understood, but the palace was a place of right and wrong, and they had managed to stay away from it. Now that Ji-yin was called in again, it was still an urgent call in the dark. How could they not be worried? At this time, the front yard suddenly became lively. The maid guarding the second door rushed in and shouted, "The princess is back." Seriously, everyone was surprised and hurried to the door. Sure enough, Ji-yin was walking in front in plain clothes, her hair was a little messy, her eye circles were a little red, her expression was not as cheerful as before, and her eyebrows were full of sadness. Shui Ling and Shui Yun followed her, also looking panicked. Everyone's heart was lifted up and they could no longer let it go. Wanner took a few steps forward, helped her sister-in-law and quickly entered the house. Li Lauer then, Jie Huan directly ordered Chun Xiu, if you are idle, step back and guard the door. Chung Xiu immediately kicked out the maids and women and closed the door. Ji-yin was placed on a chair, holding a cup of warm tea in his hand, and drank it all in one breath before he finally recovered. She looked up at the worried family members again, and said with a wry smile, "The queen passed away yesterday." In order not to delay the appointment of the crown prince and the selection of the concubine, the emperor decided not to announce the funeral secretly. The third princess collapsed, and I was taken to take care of the princess. But the princess didn't want me to stay in Cunning Palace, so she sent me out. Everyone gasped when they heard this, and they were so shocked that they didn't know what to say. The queen of a country couldn't be buried after her death in such hot weather. If the mourning is not announced, how long will it be kept secret? I have heard that the living make way for the dead. After all, the dead are the bigger ones. But when will the dead make way for the living? Crazy, really crazy, Li Lao cursed in a low voice without naming anyone, but everyone knew who was crazy. Even for someone like Wu Kuiwa, when she passed away, the Li family gave her the dignity she deserved. After the burial, the family would go to worship and make offerings every new year, and there was never a shortage. All grudges will be dissipated with the coming of death. However, the mother of a country is worse than a peasant woman. You can't announce the news after you die, and you can't be buried in peace. You can only hide in the yard and wait to rot. The only people keeping watch are your young daughters and slaves. It's really. Wanner sighed and responded in a low voice, the most ruthless emperor's family is indeed right at all. It's better to be an ordinary citizen than to be like this. Jie Huan felt sorry for her sister and looked up and down several times, fearing that she would be frightened. He stepped forward and patted the shoulder, comforting him, "Sister, are you scared? Don't be afraid, those people are crazy and can do anything. Try not to enter the palace in the future, be careful when you get involved again, you know? You are the treasure of our family. If something bad happens to you, let alone us, not even the grandma and aunt in Quanzhou, nor the fourth uncle and the marquis who are away at war can bear it." Jiyan nodded, hugged her brother's waist, and whispered in a low voice, "I know, brother. I just feel sorry for the third princess. She is not much older than me. She has to go through this. It is really pitiful." Everyone sighed. In fact, they didn't have a good impression of the third princess before. But after such a long time, they were grateful and happy to see that the third princess was sincere to Jiyan, caring and protecting her like a girl. If they can help, they are naturally willing to lend a helping hand. Unfortunately, this matter involves too much. Not to mention helping, the whole family even has to pretend not to know. The family chatted some more, and Li Lao said, "I will tell Mr. Wen and the Lu family about this matter. You must remember not to reveal the news and be cautious. Now, the man is very different from the original one. All his thoughts are on the title of crown prince and the selection of concubines. Anyone who dares to mess up his arrangements will be in danger." Everyone nodded and agreed one after another. Li Lao just got up and planned to go out. As soon as he opened the door, Muju came in from the front yard. His clothes were dusty and his lips were cracked with thirst. Everyone was pleasantly surprised and quickly welcomed him in. Even with the good news, he didn't care about being sad anymore, and quickly poured Muju a cup of herbal tea. Muju looked at her carefully, drank the tea in the cup in one gulp, picked up the teapot and drank it all, and then let out a long breath. Li Lao was rarely impatient and asked, "Brother Ju, how are you? How is the war in Jiangbei? Is there any news from Mr. Ho and Lao Si?" Muju dragged his sore legs and sat next to Jiyan, and then said, "The matter in Jiangbei is more complicated, so it was delayed for 2 more days, otherwise I would have come back long ago. I was originally worried about the food and medicine stored in Jiangbei, and planned to take the time to take a look, but I met Uncle Shan being chased. The first wave of manpower should have been sent by the man there to cut off the connection between the Marquis and his family." He pointed in the direction of the palace. Everyone guessed it and frowned. Why did that person cut off the connection between the Marquis and his family? Is he starting to be afraid of our family? Li Lao went straight to the core. This issue is very critical. If that person is afraid of their family, the family must respond quickly to avoid being caught off guard and falling into a passive situation. Muju shook his head, "It's not our family's problem, it's that guy's mind that has changed. I'm afraid he wants to wait until all the major events in Zindu are completed, and has other arrangements for the Northern Expeditionary Army, so not only is he stuck with military rations, and issued an official document to let the Northern Expeditionary Army postpone the attack. But the Marquis thought that the time had come for a decisive battle, and wanted to drive away the barbarians as soon as possible and return to the new capital. So the Marquis sent Uncle Shan back to contact his family, wanting to use the batch of grain and medicine from the Jiangbei Valley. As a result, Uncle Shan was intercepted. Uncle Shan tried his best to get injured and killed all those people, but the team of people who were grabbing food also appeared. Fortunately, I helped half of them, otherwise Uncle Shan would have been in danger. Jiyan imagined that it must be extremely dangerous at that time, and became more and more irritable in his heart. He responded, "Uncle He and the others have just left not long ago. How about chasing them back, taking them to Jiangbei, and killing all this team? Otherwise, at the critical moment, there will be if these people disrupt the situation, they may ruin the situation." Li Laoer was also concerned and echoed, "I'm afraid that Lao He and others are not enough. The second village will mobilize dozens more people. It is best to go to the home mansion to find the big housekeeper and borrow dozens of guards. Together, there will be 200 or 300, which should be enough to cope with it." Muju smiled, with a bit of pride in his expression. "Master Marquis, Princess, there is no need to go to such trouble. Uncle Shan and I have already dealt with those people and caused some trouble for their master." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1099. Chapter 1099, Etiquette is less important than affection. After that, he explained clearly how the two men led the men in black to fight with the grain-grabbing team. Most of the grain-grabbing team was killed and injured, and the man in black happened to have only one man left to return to Zindu to report to his master. Everyone felt like they were riding a roller coaster, and they were all on tenterhooks. "You're really," Li Laoer wanted to say something, but when the words came to his lips, he didn't know whether to praise or criticize. "This thing is naturally done beautifully, the snipe and the clam compete with each other, and the fisherman benefits. In the future, it will be much more convenient for Jiangbei to have no food-grabbing team secretly spying and causing trouble. Moreover, if the man in black went back to file a complaint, the master behind the food-grabbing team would be frightened and taught a lesson. It was really killing two birds with one stone. But the risk is too great. If you do not perform well, you will be easily attacked from both sides. The same goes for Yeshan. You are young and like taking risks. Why is he also fooling around? Don't do this next time. Safety is the top priority." Li Laoer finally held back a few words and asked, "Have you stored grain and medicine to send to the Northern Expeditionary Army?" It was sent, and Uncle Shan personally escorted it. Unfortunately, the food hidden in Jiangbei was not much, and it was only enough for the Northern Expedition Army to consume for half a month. Fortunately, the Marquis has already launched a decisive battle. If nothing else happens, the war will be over in half a month. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and looked much relieved. Li Laoer stood up again, "I'm going to find Mr. Wen and the Lu family to get news. Although I will be outside, I will not accept your order. After all, the opportunity of war waits for no one. But we still have to beware of someone using this matter to cause trouble." Jie Huan also stood up and said, "I have also gone back to the restaurant. If I hear any news in the restaurant, I will have someone report it back at any time." With these words, the two men went out. Wanner glanced at Muju and her sister-in-law, and made an excuse, "I'm going to see Yuan Yuan." After saying that, she also let out, giving the young couple some free space. Since the elders in the family are not here, she, the sister-in-law, wants to turn into an old hen and protect her sister-in-law. When her sister-in-law was in the palace before, she had no choice but to be in fear. But now that her sister-in-law is home, she wishes she could take care of her sister-in-law in every detail. The day before yesterday in Bianjian, the third princess and her sister-in-law almost had a falling out because of Prince Lu, and she knew about it. Originally I thought that the matter was over and the two little sisters could just untie their knots. How could I have imagined that the queen passed away again and ended up with such a miserable end? It is really pitiful for the third princess to experience the series of blows. With my sister-in-law's kindness, even if it wasn't her fault, she would still feel very guilty. As a sister-in-law, it is difficult and impossible to persuade her. Fortunately, Muju is back. Let's leave this important responsibility to my future brother-in-law. Muju got up to see his sister-in-law out. When he saw her winking, he guessed something. When no one was in the room, he took out a straw cage from his arms. The cage is only the size of a child's fist, and the golden grass stalks are cut into thin strips and woven into the shape of a small pagoda. It is really delicate and cute. I didn't have the chance to buy you a gift this time. I exchanged this grasshopper cage for a steamed bun with a naughty boy when I passed by a village. You can play with it first, and I will catch a grasshopper when I have time. Grasshopper, put it in and sing. Jiyan took the straw cage and liked it very much. Not only because of the exquisiteness of the cage, but also because of the feeling of being remembered all the time. It's so beautiful, the workmanship is so skillful. She praised it a few times and then said, "No need to catch grasshoppers, it will be noisy at night. Let me put some spices in it and hang it next to the bed tent at night." "Okay, you can do with the gift you want." Muju took the opportunity to hold Jiyan's hand and asked, "Has anyone bullied you at home these days? Tell me, I'm back, I'll take revenge on you." Jiyan felt sour and immediately looked lonely. She turned over the grasshopper cage and whispered, "No one bullied me. It's just that there have been too many things recently, and I am a little helpless and a little upset." Muju looked distressed, thought for a moment and said, "Come with me, let's go out for a walk." After saying that, he called Shuiling to prepare a few things. Jiyan hesitated a little and advised, "You just came back and you are too tired. Let's talk about it after dinner." Muju insisted, and soon the two of them led the horses out of the Earl's mansion, without even Shuiling and Shuiyun. It's close to noon now, which is the hottest time. Except for a few wilted old soldiers at the city gate, there were no cars or horses. The two of them left the city smoothly. Muju jumped on his horse, held Jiyan in his arms, flicked his whip, and the horse neighed, raised its hooves, and started galloping. The wind blowing in front of me opened the curtain of the good news, and the good news made me squint my eyes, but it felt a little more cool. She couldn't help but stretch out her arms, as if flying against the wind. Most of the annoyance and uneasiness that were suppressed in my heart flew away with the wind. Muju put one hand around her waist and held the horse's reins with the other, smiling brightly. Under the midsummer sun, on a dusty country road, two people on a horse are speeding by, feeling comfortable and frivolous. After running for half an hour, the two came to the foot of a mountain. Muju his horse and let it graze freely. He changed the backpack from behind to the front, and then carried Jiyan up the mountain without her being able to refuse. This mountain is not high, but the vegetation is unexpectedly lush. Fortunately, there is a path in the forest that leads to the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain is fairly flat. There are two boulders facing south, one standing upright and the other lying flat. The shadow of the upright boulder falls just on the lying partner, creating an excellent place to enjoy the shade and enjoy the view. Jiyan was surprised when he saw it. He jumped up on the boulder lying flat and walked around excitedly. It was really almost the same as the big Kong at home. Muju took out a few peaches, golden fruits, a bag of snacks, even a roast chicken, and a pot of water from the basket on his back. He invited Good News to sit down and said, "Let's have something to eat. This is a perfect place for a picnic." Jiyan stepped forward excitedly and chose a golden fruit. Muju took out the dagger from his waist and quickly sharpened it. I took the Good News and took a big bite. It was really sweet and cool. Then I looked at the villages and farmland down the mountain, as well as the mountains in the distance, and my mood suddenly brightened. It seems that all the depression has been completely dissipated in such beautiful scenery and delicious food. Brother Mew, when did you discover this great place? It's been a while, and I originally planned to bring you here to play, but I never had time. Mujwexu was very hungry, so he tore apart the roasted chicken, leaving 2 thighs for Jiyan, and then ate it happily. Squinted his eyes. Jiyan felt a little sad that he was running around so much. When he got home, he had to take care of her mood and took her out to relax without a moment's rest. "I'm sorry for making you suffer. I'll give you some delicious food when I get home." Muju laughed even more when he heard this, and responded, "What polite words you have to me. Your suffering and trouble are all for the sake of our family." Jiyan also smiled, "Yes, for our family." The two happily shared the meal, and when they were finally full, they lay down on the boulder to enjoy the cool breeze and chat. "There were some things that I couldn't share with my family, but I didn't hide them from Muju. From discovering Luzong's thoughts, to hiding the third princess, to the things being exposed, and finally the queen's death, the third princess's transformation. All her anger, embarrassment, guilt, and worries were all put into words." 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1100. Chapter 1100 Double Happiness. Muju chimed in a few words at first, but then his voice gradually disappeared. All the good news was finished, but all that was left was the whistling of the mountain wind. She turned around and saw that Muju had fallen into a deep sleep. Jiyan had the first opportunity to take a closer look at his sleeping face. The eyebrows are as dark as ink, the long eyelashes can even cover the entire under the eyes, the bridge of the nose is high, and the corners of the thin lips are no longer smiling like they used to, and they are a little more tired, which makes people feel distressed. The boy, who was less than 20 years old, because of the sudden huge change in his family, wanted to grow up instantly. He planned revenge and learned skills along the way, and suffered too many hardships that ordinary people could not endure. He still remains optimistic and open-minded, and is always so stubborn and brave in facing the disasters that befall the world. It seems that nothing can embarrass him, nothing can make him compromise or retreat. The two of them went from strangers to familiarity, and he gradually built up trust in her heart, and finally it became a reliable mountain. Let's not talk about the good news and let Muju bathe in the mountain breeze together and relax. Just say that in Cunning Palace, near noon, another holy driver was ushered in. The emperor had just left the court and had settled some political affairs, and then he came to offer incense to the queen. The third princess, dressed in plain clothes and wearing a mourning hat, knelt in front of a copper basin and burned paper. Her face was red due to the firelight, but she looked haggard. After all, she was his daughter. The emperor felt distressed when he saw her. After offering incense, he advised her, "Don't be sad. Your mother has been ill for too long. She will suffer if she continues like this. Now she is relieved. You have to take care of yourself. If you also fall ill, I will be worried, and your mother's spirit in heaven will not be peaceful." The third princess was silent, but after a while, she knelt and turned around, kowtowing 3 times to the emperor. "Father, my son, and I have something to ask for." The emperor frowned, glanced at the queen's coffin subconsciously, and said with difficulty, "Don't say it, your mother cannot be buried immediately. Tomorrow will be the crown prince, and the selection of the concubine will be over in 3 to 5 days. By then, your mother will be given to you. A beautiful funeral. Unexpectedly, the third princess shook her head and said, "No, father, I am not asking my mother to be buried as soon as possible. I want to get married as soon as possible and marry Prince Lu as soon as possible." The emperor was surprised when he heard this, and asked with a bit of anger, "Why are you in a hurry to get married? Did you do something wrong with Luzon?" At the end of the sentence, his expression changed. Nowadays, there are really a lot of things inside and outside the court, and everything is disturbing. If my daughter adds to the scandal again, it will simply add fuel to the fire. Father, you are too worried. My son is a princess of the same country, how could he do such an ugly thing? The third princess frowned, angry at her father's misunderstanding, but if she wanted to get her wish, she could only endure it. When the queen mother was alive, what she cared about the most was her son's marriage. If she waited for her mother's death, the son would have to observe mourning for 3 years. By then, the son would be an old girl in her 20s. And in 3 years, I'm afraid too many things will happen, and I don't want to risk my lifelong happiness. Therefore, I ask my father's permission to get married as soon as possible, preferably at the same time as the crown prince's brother chooses his concubine. This is also a double happiness for us as a royal family and a good sign." The emperor saw that his daughter didn't look like she was lying, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief and responded, "Your princess palace has been built a long time ago, and you can get married at any time. But Luzon may not be as good as you think, so you should be more cautious about this matter." The third princess smiled bitterly, raised her hand and threw a handful of paper money into the copper basin, and responded calmly, "Father, how can there be anything perfect in this world? Even you and your mother, outsiders say you treat each other like guests. In fact, my mother and queen are not. If you still stop here, you won't be able to rest in peace even if you die. It doesn't matter whoever you marry, as long as your son is still a princess. No matter what your true temperament is, you must pretend to be gentle in front of your son. That's enough. Besides, the Lu family has been monopolizing the southwest for many years, and now it is in a position of dominance. The younger ministers will marry earlier and give birth to the eldest grandson of the Lu family earlier. At that time, we can help the prince brother to better control the southwest and control the Lu family. Home. It is impossible to say that in more than 10 years, the prince's brother will be able to successfully take back the military power of the Lu family without any effort. The emperor was moved by what he heard. Lu Zongbing's previous strange behavior showed that he was unwilling to get married. Does the Lu family really have second thoughts and does not want to marry a royal princess or be controlled? The emperor was inherently suspicious, and with this suspicion, he could no longer control it. "I will consider it, but you should keep a good vigil first." The emperor said a few words, turned around and walked away. The third princess heard the squeaking sound of the door closing, with a sneer on her lips and mockery in her eyes. General Manager Yi did not follow him to Cunning Palace because he had to handle the errands ordered by the emperor. As a result, the emperor came in from the outside with a sullen face, and his heart skipped a beat. He quickly poured the emperor's favorite sour plum soup and served it carefully. Seeing that the emperor's face softened, he asked tentatively, "Your Majesty, is the third princess too sad? Do you want to send an imperial doctor over?" The emperor shook his head, raised his hand to signal the others to go out, and then asked Manager Yi, "Every time the third princess and Prince Lu meet, do you?" He was only halfway through asking when a short sound came from the corner, like a flute being played, or like the wind coming through the window lattice. Manager Yi immediately retreated behind the curtain, lowered his head, and tried his best to be a deaf-mute and transparent person. At this time, an old in grey quietly appeared in the room, took a few steps forward, and placed a copper pipe on the desk. The emperor opened the copper pipe in twos and took out a note. He only glanced at it for a few times before frowning severely. "Prince Xian, come here." "Yes, Your Majesty. Manager Yi hurried out and went to Zilong Pavilion to invite people in person. When the prince arrived, the emperor was walking around on the ground with his hands behind his back. When he saw his son coming, he waved his hands. Manager Yi closed the door himself and stood guard by the door. The emperor's first words were, "The Lu family is not as honest as they appear, and I was deceived." The Lu family's men, numbering in the hundreds, appeared in Jiangbei, and intercepted and killed the secret guards I sent, with unknown intentions. The prince was stunned for a moment and responded, "Father, please calm down. The Lu family has military power after all, and it is not surprising that they have some secret personnel. However, at this critical moment, the Lu family's personnel in Jiangbei must have some arrangements, or just need to find out." After saying that, he thought for a while and said, "Shizilu is now ill. I don't know how long his marriage to the princess sister will be postponed. Otherwise, we can take advantage of this opportunity to insert some people into the Lu family." The emperor frowned and then sighed. "It's a coincidence that your sister just asked me to marry Lu Zong as soon as possible. She also said that choosing a concubine with you would be a double blessing." The prince raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. He did not doubt that the third princess had inquired about the news about Jiangbei in advance. After all, she was a princess raised in a deep palace and did not have the strength and ability. It's just that Lu Zong injured the key point before. Isn't the third princess afraid that Lu Zong will not be humane in the future? She is already so deeply in love with Lu Zong. End of this chapter.